But police have warned against the peddling of fake stories. First up, we're joined now by Africa Check's researcher Naledi Mashisho, who recently had to fact-check claims in the media that 1 million children are trafficked every year. There are also claims that a child is kidnapped every 30 seconds in South Africa. Hello, Naledi, and welcome to our discussion. Recently, you had to fact-check a statement by an influential TV presenter saying that 1 million children are trafficked every year in South Africa. Now, overall, before we get into the nitty-gritty, when you fact-check these claims, how do you do it?
Well, thanks for having me on the show again. It's actually quite a not so much a complex process. So what we do is we try to find any sort of government official data on trafficking. So the first thing I would do in this case is I looked at her thread, and in her thread she had said someone had asked her for the source of her claim, and she had said that it comes from the UN, so she should check the UN website. So that's exactly what I did. When I checked the UN website, I found that the closest thing to that claim was a statistic from 2000, which said that 1.2 million children had been trafficked worldwide that year. But there was no country-specific data. So I started trying to look around for country-specific data, looking at NGOs that work with human trafficking to see if they had released any reports. I managed to find a trafficking in persons report that was released by the US State Department. It's a yearly report that gives you the full scope of human trafficking all over the world. And their report in 2019 found that in 2018, South Africa had prosecuted around 260 cases of human trafficking. So the sort of official government body research reports that I found did not back up this 1 million children claim. And
what kind of fact exists about how many children in our country are trafficked every year? Do we have that?
We don't really. So the difficult aspect of this is that there is no centralized data on human trafficking. So if you call the SAPs, you'll get one thing. You call the NPA, you'll get another thing. You call NGOs that deal with human trafficking, you'll get another statistic. So that's what makes it very difficult for researchers to actually understand the full scope of human trafficking in this country. The best thing that we do have at this point is police reports. So, for example, the US Trafficking in Persons reports will say how many cases of human trafficking South African police prosecuted the previous year. But the problem with that, obviously, is that the number of cases that are being prosecuted will be a fraction of the amount of cases that exist. So we simply don't know how many children are trafficked every year in South Africa. We can't put an exact number on that. But the research that we have right now does suggest that it's nowhere near 1 million children.
So that's an exaggerated number that did the rounds recently in the media and social media. But there are other figures and claims around human trafficking that you have checked and found not to be true. For example, I saw your report saying that the claim that every 30 seconds a child is kidnapped in South Africa is not factual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's actually funny enough on that claim. We did some calculations, and we found that if that claim were to be true, that a child is kidnapped every 30 seconds, then that would amount to roughly 1 million children a year. So there may be this may be a sort of zombie claim that's been going around, but really we could not find any evidence to substantiate that a child is stolen every 30 seconds in South Africa for pretty similar reasons to what I outlined before. That first of all, there isn't really data. Coherent, clear data on how many children are being kidnapped a year for us to even make that estimation in the first place. But also, because of the hidden nature, and that's largely because of the hidden nature of human trafficking, but also because there is no real data that exists, people tend to make these very sensationalized claims about how many children are being abducted and where they're being abducted that actually don't have any factual basis, and this was one of them.
What kind of evidence is there to back up the recent panic and anxiety that we've seen on social media, and involving a lot of even prominent personalities saying that this crime is increasing Is there any data that, when you are fact-checking, that could back up, or any information that Africa Check has come across in your research?
From my research, there isn't really data to back up a lot of the claims that have been made on social media. I mean, for example, the data that was put out by SAP seems to indicate that the number of kidnappings, for example, has actually gone down. But then again, kidnapping isn't the only way that people can be trafficked without technically being kidnapped. So that's not even a reliable measure itself. But in my research, I wasn't able to find any sort of factual basis. In fact, when you look at the data seems to indicate that child trafficking in particular is not as widespread in South Africa. People who've actually gone into communities to try and find trafficked children have gone to organizations that deal with children and deal with victims of sex crime to try and find out how many of them have had to deal with trafficked children. Have found very few, that kind of research has found very few children who actually have been trafficked, and even few have been trafficked into the sex trade. So it's really difficult to try and find data to back up any sort of claims on human trafficking. But it's very difficult for me to say where the recent panic on social media comes from, because there doesn't really seem to be much data to back it up.
Yeah, we're going to try, Naledi, and get a clearer picture in this today's special discussion with guests that are coming up, including the Deputy Minister of Justice and the global NGO A21, who describe themselves as the modern-day abolitionists who are fighting against human trafficking. But from what you've just said, before I let you go, it looks like at times, I'm not trying to downplay kidnapping as one of the ways that is used, of course, to human traffic. It is a way that people get kidnapped and they end up being human trafficked. But sometimes smuggling as well, and some, let me use the words, in inverted commas, normal kidnapping for other reasons, can be conflated as human trafficking. Have you found that in your research?
Yes, particularly smuggling. So, we need to differentiate between people who are trafficked and people who are smuggled. People who are smuggled are those who consent to being taken into a country illegally, maybe because they can't get the proper legal documentation to be in a country. And there are actually a number of children who do get smuggled into a country because they want to be. So the statistics on those people who get smuggled by choice can often be conflated with people who are trafficked, and that makes it even more difficult to get an accurate picture of what's going on. And also, of course, on social media, you'll see posts going around of people who are missing, and there's this automatic assumption that they've been trafficked. When someone going missing or being kidnapped does not necessarily mean that they've been trafficked. Trafficking is very specific. If you look at the definition of trafficking from the UN, it must be an action like recruitment or abduction that uses a means like threat and coercion for the purpose of exploitation. If those three factors aren't in place, it's really difficult to call it trafficking. And unfortunately, there are cases where people will take situations that don't meet that criteria and automatically label it as trafficking.
Naledi Mashishi from Africa Check, thank you very much.